Wong is the AI and data analytics leader for Dell, and his current role as the AI and data analytics practice leader for Dell. He works with technologists within Dell, responsible for Canada. He's the author of a number of books on data analytics and data management, and also a quarterly newsletter on artificial intelligence. His education includes an MBA in finance, and he has taught numerous courses at the University of Toronto continuing education program, which includes strategic IT planning and analytics for financial services. Bill, what an honor to have you with us. Very much looking forward to your presentation today.
Thank you, Jose. Excuse me, folks, and apologize for my technical difficulties with my laptop. Thanks for joining. And you should be and my laptop is currently thinking. So what we'll take you through today, the quick agenda is an overview of what's happening in the finance world and the AI world and how they come together, and share with you best practices. First, a little bit about where I'm from is Canada, and why I bring up Canada is because Canada is the first country to announce a national AI strategy, and that was back in 2017. And as of December in 2020, 30 countries now around the world have identified that AI is strategic enough to define a national strategy. So
Bill, just to let you know that your presentation right now is not shown. So if you could go under sharing and show screen to the audience.
hoping my screen is showing.
Not yet, not yet. Yeah, so make sure you're in presentation mode, and then under the sharing tab, pick the screen under the show screen button that has the monitor in which the presentation is showing.
I'm there, and it looks like my laptop is spinning a little bit.
Yeah, there may be a little bit of a delay. So here's one suggestion, Bill. We can, if it's okay with you, we can just go on without sharing the presentation at this point with the audience, and then maybe we can send to the audience a copy later on, you know, of an overview, if you will, of the presentation.
That's fine. I've presented enough times that I don't really need the slides in front of me.
Right, yeah, and you may be able to use even on your end and not transmit them, because it seems like there's something there with the interface that's not working out for you right now. So if you're able to use them on your side, feel free to go ahead, and I'll just mute myself here, let you carry on.
Okay.
Oh, it's showing through now, Bill. But it's just not showing the right screen. So you go under the show screen button and pick a different screen that only shows your presentation, if you could.
How's that?
Right now, the version that's showing shows the GoToWebinar interface on it as well. So there should be a clean version in there. If you pick under the show screen button, there should be a clean version that you should be able to share, the clean version. That one, that is the clean version. And if you could go back to page number 1, I think we'll be in good shape.
Okay.
Right now, we see digital transformation index over the years. Canada
Right.
and artificial intelligence.
An agenda.
Not yet. It's not showing agenda yet. Agenda now. Now we have the agenda.
Okay. So again, apologies for the technical glitches in my laptop. Typically doesn't happen, but I have some new equipment here. So I'm going to briefly spend time here on what's happening in the industry, both from a financial services and AI. Talk about some of the key challenges and what people are investing in trying to adopt AI, and a little bit about multi-cloud deployments. That's getting a lot of interest today. Regarding Canada, I mentioned before, for a lot of countries who believe that AI will be a strategic force for people in their lives, in government, etc., they've announced national strategies. And Canada was the first to do this, and up to 30 countries have done that now. Now, financial services typically is one of the top industries when it comes to adopting new technology, and AI is no different. What Dell's done is they've done surveys every 2 years, talked to C-level execs to see what is their adoption rate for digital transformation, digitizing their services. And not surprisingly, finance leads the pack with most industries. So you don't find too many which we would call digital laggards. You really just can't exist in financial services unless you're heavily into IT and optimizing your processes with technology. Where they're excelling here, and if you want, there is I think 100-page PDF document at the Dell site that goes into excruciating detail of the survey. But at a high level here, financial services is seen as a leader in many of these fields here. I'm going to just focus on a few here. Digital skills, 9%. It's not surprising that when you compare it versus the global averages, you'll find that financial services is ahead of the curve in adoption. Some of the challenges that financial services still face is that extracting data to produce valuable insights is still a bit of a challenge here. Not surprising. 5G, although there's a lot of hype in 5G, it's not a technology that a lot of financial services are eager or in a rush to implement. Some of the standout investments here, digitizing the banking services or wealth management services. It should be no surprise that AI is high in financial services as a technology to adopt. And multi-cloud. Many are looking into multi-cloud deployments for AI. Now, financial services again lead the curve in understanding the importance of analytics and AI and how it can change the game here. I've seen some surveys like from McKinsey that claim $1 trillion impact to the business within a year. Some say it might be overhyped, and there's probably a bit of that going on. And the truth is probably somewhere a little more conservative estimate. But no doubt about it, AI analytics is very important in this industry. Now, AI is getting to be such a pervasive technology. If you follow Gartner and their emerging technologies, it's impacting hardware technology. There's a separate hype curve just for AI. And emerging technologies, you also see a number of new AI technologies coming up. A lot of these things here, composite, generative AI, these are new technologies to adopt and proliferate new technologies such as composite AI, where AI is used to develop new faces. So you'll see faces that you've never really seen before. Now, in financial services, there's a wealth of applications that we've seen AI deployed in. My experience with financial services that I've seen, customer experience, customer support tend to lead the pack. However, many are using AI to enhance security and fraud detection. I guess up and coming, one of the things that I haven't seen a lot is IoT, except maybe in insurance. But it's safe to say that AI's many different ways that AI can be implemented. MasterCard. So this is a true story. A few years ago, I was in a city talking about AI, and somebody came up to me and said he was a MasterCard uh, user, and he bought something with his card, and it was a bag of chips or something for a long road trip. And about an hour later, when he was driving, he stopped at a gas station and he used his MasterCard to fill up the tank or pay for the gas. And to his surprise, it was rejected. And it worked an hour ago, and he was wondering why an hour later it was rejected. So he called MasterCard, and MasterCard told him, he said, well, yes, we do have record that you used it in this city, and then we rejected it because technically speaking, you really shouldn't be at this new location using that card. And he had a good laugh about that and said, okay, it's not really a false positive. I get that. And he admitted that he was speeding a little bit. And technically, yes, he shouldn't have been there filling up gas at that time. So this is an example of how far technology has come in trying to make sure that nobody uses your credit card unauthorized. Now, most of you would recognize these company icons. The one here on the bottom here belongs to a company called Graphcore. And Graphcore is a new company, a chip company, and they build chips specially designed to run deep learning algorithms really quickly. And here's the spectrum that people have for AI accelerators. On the far left, my left at least, we have CPUs and general purpose compute resources, and predominantly dominated by Intel and AMD. The reason why I highlight AMD is the past few years, the market share of AMD has been improving, and unfortunately at the expense of Intel. So in financial services, it's one of these industries where faster is better. And so we still have a great relationship with Intel, but of course, the stealth strategy is really to place our bets across all compute platforms. So we do have strong relations with AMD. NVIDIA is the 800-pound gorilla, I call them, for GPU processing. Very important if you want to optimize algorithms using deep learning algorithms. FPGAs, or field programmable gate arrays, we see these deployed in industries such as retail, manufacturing, and we have solutions there as well. But all the vendors on the right here, this is where all the startup capital is being invested in, and you see lots of new chips here. Now, these ASICs, or what's called application-specific integrated circuits, are optimized chips to run AI algorithms, specifically deep learning, and they run faster, cheaper, consume less power. And this is where the growth is, especially with IoT devices. I'm just going to spend a little bit about here, but in finance, especially hedge funds, they've been kind of the leaders in applying new types of analytics over time. I'm going to talk a little bit more about alternative data on the right, but high frequency trading of late has begun to use AI algorithms. And again, the financial industry has been using Monte Carlo analytics here that you see on the left to do predictions. And your high-end financial services firms use those predictions into predictive modeling for stock prices. And what that's led to is you're seeing folks like Dell create platforms that can merge these type of analytics together, AI analytics along with things like HPC type analytics, or what's called HPDA. So this box that you see here on the right hand of the screen is a platform that can deploy algorithms for like Monte Carlo analysis to high performance type simulations, plus have all that software that can be deployed for AI like Kubernetes, TensorFlow, etc. Relatively new in the industry, as far as I know, Dell's the only vendor that has a consolidated platform for these analytics. Both these screens, I guess, quadrants are new this year, 2021. The one I want to highlight is the one on the left here. And for the first time in this Magic Quadrant, they placed machine learning, what we call platforms to accelerate your development efforts. They placed the cloud vendors, AWS, Microsoft, Google, along with the on-prem vendors. And so based on their completeness of their development platforms, it would seem that the on-prem vendors still have an advantage today over the cloud vendors. Now, alternative data, if let's say about 10 years ago, big data was a term that was introduced to represent, and what we have here, very large data sets that you consume, processing, things like every stock trade that was ever done, analyzed that last year. That would represent like multiple terabytes of data. And there are algorithms that process that type of data. And now what's kind of new in the last few years is this term, what we call alternative data here. A lot of it is still based from publicly available information, kind of business processes like earning calls. But some of this new data is what individuals create, let's say like on social media. And there are algorithms, there are people paying to get access to this kind of data to help them create new alphas for stocks that they're tracking. So can a person, and in this case, a lot of the hedge funds have invested in this technology, can I get an edge on getting additional type of data that gives me insight on their future productivity output? That's why you see up here on the upper right, satellite imagery. Can I use satellite imagery to see if they're working overtime? Can I speculate its contribution to its revenue? So it's a new field. And the challenge in consuming what they call big data, alternative data, is more and more firms we're seeing is they're ingesting event-based or near real-time data. And that's new for a lot of people in analytics. Usually it's historical, lots of data, but now it's more and more, it's getting to be real-time. So this chart is a little cluttered, but it's meant to say that there are lots of choices, lots of vendor offerings here to take data and to transform it and make it usable for the people that we have here on the right. A best practice that we're seeing right now is rather than put everything in the cloud, which a lot of firms I've met are doing that without any question, folks are standing back and wondering, okay, does this application, does it make sense to put this in the cloud? And some of the business questions they'll ask that is questions like, well, where does the data reside? Does it make sense that we put it up there? Do I have better security locally on-prem? Not surprisingly, AWS, Azure, Google are the top three public cloud vendors. And Oracle's, based on this data, was number 4. And Dell or VMware was 5th. And we're hoping to improve that this year with offerings to support both Google and Azure. Now, this slide is for your reference. And I didn't make it complete to include things like security. I assume that's a given that you're going to think about this in multi-cloud. So the purpose of this is to identify those technologies if you're going to build analytical or AI type apps. And these are the offerings from the major cloud vendors, from Dell, and from open source. So an example, I'm working with a customer today, and they're challenged in trying to corral everybody's AI efforts. And if you talk to your IT people, it's not surprising that they'll get one line of business in finance saying, I need $250,000 to bring up a platform so we can develop this application. And then wealth management comes in and says, I need $5 million to do that. So IT departments are challenged, especially in financial services with all the demand for resources, is how can I streamline this? How can I attempt to consolidate this? And so, again, what we're moving toward is a as-a-service model-driven environment where you deploy hardware and software with platform as a service. This data service is relatively new. We find a lot of data scientists spend a lot of time trying to figure out how to try to wrangle the data to make it usable by the algorithms. So we anticipate lots of demands for this type of service. And then, of course, like I showed you before, those data science platforms, many folks are looking to these to increase productivity. But overall today, I would say most people are using machine learning frameworks such as TensorFlow and PyTorch today. A best practice in developing AI applications is to step back first and to define a strategy. And if you're an enterprise architect, you may recognize this, strategy and technique. We've adapted this for AI, and this is something that we share and do jointly with our customers at no charge. What we do too for companies with lots and lots of data who need lots and lots of compute resource is we have a center located in Austin that I've used with a number of my customers to test their algorithms to give better ideas on configurations for compute platforms for their sites. Now, here's a few examples of video analytics, and in financial services, some of the things that we're starting to see now is using video analytics when people make loan applications, and then to measure micro expressions. So unfortunately, it's getting down to that technology. People are using that today for asynchronous job interviews. So some sites now, you're not really talking to anybody, you're just producing a video for a person and potentially algorithms to assess. And recognizing that, we have a number of labs worldwide where we work with vendors, and there's lots of startup vendors and established vendors building applications for financial services, and we test those all out. So last slide here is best practices that we see. And this is what differentiates the leaders we see, let's say, in financial services, is number one is to have a culture of using data as a corporate asset. And as a corporate asset, it's a shared resource. It's not siloed, it is shared amongst all lines of business. The other best practice I can't emphasize enough is to adopt an architectural approach. Get the key stakeholders, establish a vision, a strategy of why you want to advance AI at your firm. And then when we post this up, there'll be links here to additional information of offerings that are out there in the marketplace. Back to you, Jose.
Fantastic, Bill. Fantastic. You have covered quite a bit of ground here on the multiple technologies and strategies that are available. I ask the audience to keep submitting your questions, and I will pass it on to Bill in real time here. And so ask your question. How are you using artificial intelligence right now in your organizations? What level of development you're at? The beginning? Are you a more advanced user? Regardless of where you are in the journey, ask questions, because Bill has experienced the whole thing from beginning to end. So it would be great to have the perspectives directly from a global expert in artificial intelligence. So Bill, the first theme that I've seen emerging here, and I'll keep looking for others, has to do with governance for AI. And maybe that is too specific. Maybe it's governance for data analytics and governance for at a higher level than just AI. But if you look at some of the best practices that you have experienced in the industry, how do you see the governance for analytics and AI being established in organizations to set them up for success?
That's a really great question and a very important question, especially in financial services. So I'll try to give you a few examples here. First, why is it important? Especially in banking, you want to have governance so that everybody is treated the same and the same decisions are made based on data, not on a personal assessment on whether or not this person can pay. That's not something that you can replicate to another person there. So in order to do that, I mentioned before, you have to be data driven. And what I mentioned before in one of the slides that I showed on data as a service, when we take in data, what this data as a service does is it provides governance by cataloging data. So it knows when it captures data, and throughout the life cycle, there's a lineage that a lot of people look for. And then there's also on explainability of your algorithm. So why did you make that decision? Why was that person selected to receive a loan? Why was that person not? All these things need to be tracked, automated. And the best practices are to use automated tools to do this rather than manual, which is possible, but very, very painful. It's a long time to do. So there are a number of tools that are out there, and I pointed out one example is Boomi. There's another one, Calibra. These are tools that people use when they build a data platform to support analytics that track the life cycle of the data as it comes in, how it's used, and what decisions, and then records, oh, here was the result of the decision with this data. So it's important to track that, and as new loans get accepted or rejected, you take that data and put it back and feed it into the model. So I hope that kind of addresses. It's very important financial services. Best way to do it, there are tools there, and you need things to do is like track things like lineage and how that data is used throughout the whole process.
Great coverage there. Great coverage there. There are a number of questions coming up here, and I will just pick a few of them. Keep submitting your questions. This one comes from Steve Sponseller. Steve, great to have you with us. Steve is actually an author on a book about patents called the Patent Code, and so very works with a lot of technology companies around the world. And Steve's question today has to do with the fact that the financial services industry is heavily regulated, and how do companies satisfy these regulations while using AI?
Well, thanks, Steve, for the question. Yes, when I've worked with financial services firms, when we talk about strategy for AI, usually three big things come to mind on deploying applications. One is grow the business. Two is typically has to do with customer experience, and three is compliance. It is first and foremost very important in everybody's mind, and I think AI can help enforce a lot of these things. So we digitize the compliance requirements into algorithms. So in some ways, AI can help adherence to that. So you remove that human factor, and it doesn't really cross the line. Like case in point, when you have these rogue traders who break all the rules about having your reserve funds, and that's happened in the past. AI can take those restrictions, limitations, call them rules, into effect so that those things are not broken. So in many ways, AI can certainly augment the trader and prevent them from making those mistakes.
Very good. Thank you. Thank you, Bill, for that. The other theme that has emerged here is around the definition of AI itself, Bill. It's not often that we have a global expert like you available to answer these questions directly. So we want to take advantage of it and get a more definitive answer on AI, if you will. And what I mean by that is that there's this whole spectrum where on one side you have, AI and the work that's being done by deep learning and the, cognitive algorithms and things like that. And on the other spectrum, you have people who are publishing reports sometimes talking about use of AI. And when you look at the report, they just did like a regression analysis. And it's like, and it's like, that's not, in my view, AI. So where is the state of AI currently in the world in terms of from a practical standpoint and what's being used? The cognitive portion of AI, how much has it been developed at this point?
Well, as much as I'm a big fan of the use of analytics and AI, I'll be the first to admit and the first to point out when AI is overhyped. And I think in the evolution of AI, AI is still very immature. The applications that are all deployed out there, they're great, but they're very narrow in scope, very simple. The concept of general AI is still far off in the future. We are so much smarter than AI in so many ways. It takes rooms full of computers for AI to make a prediction, a diagnosis sometimes where our brains, the electricity of a light bulb can outperform AI in some respects. Now, AI can be great in finding uncovered patterns that it's almost impossible for humans to do. So, so there is that advantage. Again, it takes case by case. One vendor I'm not going to call out, but one that I used to work for would say, "Hey, we're going to cure cancer." And for me, it's great to have what we call moonshots, but you have to put some kind of parameters on how realistic that is and a time frame. So I think definitely AI is changing people's lives today. And when people are concerned also about the effect and the impact of AI, and I think for office jobs, AI, it's easier for AI to actually augment, sometimes duplicate those jobs. Folks fearing AI, if you lay down bricks, if you make ice cream cones, that's actually tougher for AI to do. Those manual tasks are actually tougher. So in a way, you would think that was kind of reversed. It's such advanced technology, but that's not the case. So yes, I think it's great to ask that. Regression analysis is a machine learning algorithm. The AI that is really transforming things tend to be the deep learning algorithms. So some of the slides I showed about, that's kind of where a lot of the research is really focused on. So I hope that
very good. That's helpful. That provides a good background, Bill. The next question here is an interesting question, kind of a nationwide level question from Manish Kothari. And Manish asks, how does Canada's AI strategy and standards for the country compare or differ from those that have been established in the US, in the UK, and China?
Let's just take the US and China. Those are kind of the big juggernauts a lot of people talk about. Unfortunately, the US really didn't what I would call a national strategy. You can't deny the power of the US in terms of innovation, but they really didn't try to get people together to work toward a common cause. But that may change. There's a new administration. There's certainly a new focus on that. In Canada, what we've done is we've developed 3 centers, and one out in Quebec, one in Ontario, one out west. And their charter is to help companies consume these technologies, to help startup companies get up and running. They've also helped establish research centers. So we see a lot of commercial companies set up AI labs in Canada. Now, we are such a small fraction when it comes to AI revenue, but Canada is often most cited for its research. The US, I think will continue to be a dominant player. However, China is what we call at the other end, very focused, very centralized, government pumping billions of dollars in there. And they're probably the leader when it comes to deploying video analytics. One might question whether it's ethical or not, but they're going to be leading in gathering a lot of information there, and seems that they're trying to push other companies within China to use that. Whereas in the US, Canada, we have a different political system. Might be slower, but again, probably a more acceptable manner going forward there. So you're right. The question, people do have kind of different strategies, kind of based on their resources. The other country I see doing a lot of work to keep an eye out for is India. They've also invested a tremendous amount of money. They have a huge brain trust as well.
That's excellent. And one final question here that we have time for, kind of tagging along on a comment made by Anna Martinez. First, she says, amazing experience today. Thanks for sharing such insights through your slides as well. A lot of interesting market level information about technology. But her specific question is, just your insight can you share when or where should companies consider data transformation? Is that a signal that you're ready for a data transformation? I mean, the businesses models can vary so significantly, but I think that her curiosity is around when is the right time to really dive deeper into data transformation as part of your business transformation?
Yeah, that it's a good question. It's a tough question because data transformation, what we have found is it's unique for every company. So in your company, it'll depend on many things like the skills that you have today. One key indicator that we take a look at is at your executive level. How committed are they? Do you have a champion? Have you been able to, let's say, narrow to a use case, a specific use case that would benefit the company to get people on board? And the thing to do, especially if you're new, is to try to scope it into something that's achievable, something realistic, not like if you're a hospital and you're going to cure cancer. Baby steps, and data transformation will be one of those critical and first steps. Before you can do AI, you need to be able to manage your data and then take the steps in transforming it so it's usable by your AI algorithms. So I hope that answers it. It is unique, but take well thought out steps and scope it. Don't pick a moonshot to be your first AI application.
That's great insight. Starting small and scaling and what creates value on each step of the way. Terrific insights. Bill, what a pleasure to have you with us again. You've been with us in different conferences, and your expertise is so valuable to our global audience. Thank you so much for taking the time from Toronto, Canada to the world for sharing that expertise today.
Thank you again, Jose, and thanks people for joining. Have a great day.
Very well. Ladies and gentlemen, that was Bill Wong, AI and data transformation leader for Dell. Wonderful to have him again with us on the Financial Services Live and providing the specific industry perspectives. As you saw in his presentation, if you go back and replay this recording later on, when you get the recording, lots of tremendous insights about the industry and evolution of technology in the financial services industry on his presentation. So I'd encourage you to go back and review those slides with a little bit more time. There's a lot of great information in there. Now we're gonna wrap up this session. I think that our conference leader, Brian Raffel, has put a note under the chat that there is a little pop-up that comes up on the, when you use the close button on the session ended pop-up, there will be a little survey that comes up. And if you have feedback on the sessions, please provide feedback on the sessions, on everything related to the conference that will help us bring you better experiences in the future. Now, we're going to take a break now. We're going to come back at the top of the hour, and we're going to wrap up directly from Frankfurt, Germany, with Janet Salmon, who is the Chief Product Owner of Management Accounting for SAP. And she's going to be presenting to us the SAP's vision of finance transformation. So many great organizations around the world use SAP as their ERP system in their organizations. And we're going to learn directly from someone who owns the product and understands, the current version and the future developments that the product is taking. Speak directly with you. So save great questions for Janet, and I am very much looking forward to her presentation. And I will meet every one of you back at the top of the hour. See you back.